Welcome back to Game Talk 24/7. I'm your host, Josh Cunningham. Before we get to the video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and like the video. It really means a lot. It really helps out the channel, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, don't be afraid to comment down below. Without further ado, let's talk sports. Hey guys, welcome back to Game Talk 24/7. Today is Tuesday, December 9th. And boy, what a weekend of college football did we have in the amazing conference championship games that we had. Some of them not so amazing when it comes to the final score and, how competitive those games were. Some were really competitive, and you saw a game between two Titans in Indiana and Ohio State, a clash of two top-tier college football teams right now that were going at it for the first time in the Big Ten Championship. Then you see some not-so-great scores of Alabama and Georgia whooping Alabama, or Texas Tech whooping BYU. But we had a great weekend of college football. We also had a chaotic weekend of college football with the ACC champion being Duke in kind of the doomsday event of college football in the college football playoff bracket and the college football playoff committee kind of happening and forcing them to put in JMU because they need the top 5 conference champions and more in all of the selection show. We also have had some college basketball. I know I haven't talked a lot about college basketball recently. We've had some of that too going on. We're going to discuss some of the scores that happened this past week. But first, let's just start with the college football playoff bracket. So in the college football playoff bracket, we have, so first off, you have your 5, we'll go 1 to 5 actually, sorry. So we're going to go with Indiana at 1. Then you have Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 3, Texas Tech at 4, Oregon at 5, Ole Miss at 6, Texas A&M at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Alabama at 9, Miami at 10, Tulane at 11, and JMU at 12. Yes, you heard me right. We have 2 group of 5 teams in. And it's because in the language of the college football playoff committee's selection process, they have to have the 5 highest conference champions. So 5 highest ranked conference champions. And one of them being automatically a group of 5 team. So one has to be a group of 5 team, so that's where you get Tulane. JMU comes in, though, because Duke beat Virginia and upset them in the ACC championship due to how weird the ACC's tiebreakers are. Due to how weird the ACC's tiebreakers are, they had to go to the 5th tiebreak to kind of fit in the next person in the ACC champion. That was 7-5 Duke. I think they were 7-5. Let's see, was Duke 7-5 in that game? Yes, they were 7-5 going to that game. Now they're 8-5, and they upset Virginia. It's kind of pathetic how a 7-5 team can compete in a conference championship like that and kind of go and upset Virginia and then take away a spot from a top-tier team in the college football playoff selection and put in JMU. It's kind of pathetic, but it's also not because it's college football and crazy things happen. College football is chaotic. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. And, JMU, they worked so hard this year. While they've earned this moment, it's not a moment that you would, while they've worked so hard and they've earned this moment, it's not a moment that you would say, man, JMU should be in the college football playoff over teams like Vanderbilt, Texas, BYU, and so many others. Or multiple others. Maybe not so many, but multiple others. And so you look at it and you say, man, did the committee get it right? And in the end, I would say yes. You'd say Notre Dame also should probably be in. And that's a very good point because Notre Dame could probably beat half of the field. I'm not saying they would beat half the field, but Notre Dame could probably beat 6 of the teams in there. They could definitely beat Texas A&M or Miami. I know they lost to them in week 1 or week 2, but saying as of now, Notre Dame could definitely beat them on a neutral site. Now, it may not be easy, but they could beat them. It's possible. Notre Dame could beat Tulane, JMU. They could probably beat Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin. So, that's half of the playoff field. They could beat Alabama and Oklahoma. Again, none of it would be easy, but that's about half the playoff field that they could beat. I'm not saying they would beat them, but could beat them. And they might even be the betting favorite to beat them if they played right now against some of those teams. So, you look at it and you're like, man, Notre Dame could have gotten in. Miami jumped Notre Dame. Well, how'd that happen? So, first off, let's go to the conference championships first off before we say how that happened. You had a beautiful game between Indiana and Ohio State. Indiana won 13-10. As an Ohio State fan, that was very frustrating. It was not fun to watch at moments. It was fun to watch at moments, but I can't hate Indiana. What Kirk Cignetti has done at Indiana is very impressive, and very beautiful to see, and it shows how anyone can succeed at college football if they just have the resources, or if they just have a good coach. For instance, maybe not the resources, but just a good coach. So I can't blame Indiana. I can't be mad at Indiana. I mean, I didn't see this coming. I can't be mad at them. They look good, but well, let's dive into some of the stats of the game. So you have Fernando Mendoza going 15 for 23 and throwing for 222 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So Fernando Mendoza, while he might not have lit up the score chart with 300 plus yards passing or more than 1 touchdown, he made throws when it counted. He made throws to Elijah Surratt for the touchdown. That was a tough contested catch by Elijah Surratt, but it was also a good throw to give Elijah Surratt the chance to catch the ball. He made multiple throws to Charlie Becker late in the game to kind of to either extend drives or seal the game kind of by giving them a drive that takes off so much more time and giving them a big first down that they needed. So he came up big in what would we say is our Heisman moments. He came up big in those Heisman moments. I'm only putting air quotes around it because we say they're Heisman moments. And so when you say it's a Heisman moment, it's meaning these are moments that you could say could win him a Heisman. These big plays. Now, for instance, does that have to be the reason why he wins a Heisman? No. Because, for instance, let's say Julian Saint and Ohio State would have won the game and they would have won with a score of 28-13. Now, that didn't happen, obviously, but if they did, then Julian Saint would be the betting favorite to win the Heisman instead of Fernando Mendoza, even though Julian Saint might not have those Heisman moments. I think Heisman moments they're just moments that a player has in a game where they make a big impact. They have these big moments under pressure in games that help their team win. That's what a Heisman moment is. That's what Fernando Mendoza did. It's not necessarily a moment that declares him the Heisman. Because, well, Fernando Mendoza is probably going to win the Heisman, and that's deservedly so. He has proven that multiple times in multiple games where he has had these Heisman moments of these tough moments, these moments under pressure that he put his team on his back and carried them to a win. He's had those moments. And so, again, he's had those Heisman moments. Now, every play he does is a Heisman moment? No. Because not every moment in a game is a Heisman type of moment or Heisman type of environment in that game. Against Penn State, it's a Heisman moment. Now, Heisman moments you could say are overrated. Because let's say a team won comfortably every single game, and then the favorite to win the Heisman and the person who eventually won the Heisman didn't have any of those Heisman moments because they were never under pressure. They were never losing. You can't fault them for that. That just means they succeeded and they did really well. But Heisman moments are very helpful if you have a team like Indiana, because with a team like Indiana staying undefeated, they had to have some of those Heisman moments. They had to have some of those moments where Fernando Mendoza put them on their back and put him on his back and said, "Follow him, come with me. We're going to the win. We're going to get a win. We're going to keep marching up this hill, keep chugging along." And so, when you see that, you see those Heisman moments. Those Heisman moments, while they aren't always the end-all, be-all, they are important to declaring the Heisman. And they also are important to just seeing how good a team actually is. Because when you see a quarterback come up with those Heisman moments, now other quarterbacks can do that too. But when you see one in particular do it, and you see him do it again and again and again, you see that, okay, maybe there's something more to this guy than what we're letting on. Now, Fernando Mendoza's stats could be even better if Indiana wasn't so good running the ball throughout the season and ran the ball as much as they did. Because, I mean, they ran for 300 yards in a couple games, I'm pretty sure, throughout the season, or above 200 yards, definitely a couple games throughout the season. So when you see that, you're going to see Fernando Mendoza's stats be a little down because, well, they're running the ball really well. So you're going to see the quarterback stats go down a little bit. But he had those Heisman moments. And again, while the Heisman moments might not be the end-all, be-all in who declaring the Heisman, when you have the Heisman moments that Fernando Mendoza has mixed in with the record and mixed in with the stats, while he might not have the best stats ever of a Heisman, he's the quarterback of right now the best team in college football. Right now, the best team in college football. That could change by the time we crown a national champion. Indiana may not be the best team by the time we crown a national champion. It may become Georgia. It may become Ohio State. It may become Texas Tech, Oregon. Now, right now it's Indiana, and Indiana's the number one team. Now they have the bullseye on their back. They're the hunted. They're the ones being hunted instead of hunting the number one spot. And so when you look at that, you just say, okay, usually the Heisman Trophy goes to the quarterback of the best team most of the time. And you see that. And while that shouldn't be how that is, that's kind of just how the award's gone. And so when you look at that, Fernando Mendoza is the quarterback on right now the best team in college football. And he's had these Heisman moments, these big-time moments, these winning moments that kind of cemented that. And he had some of those against Ohio State. Indiana also ran for 118 yards on the ground, led by Kalen Black, who ran for 69 yards and a 37 long. And then Roman Hemby had 52 yards on 13 carries. Kalen Black had 16 carries. So they ran for about 3.5 yards average. 3.5 yards an average a carry because they ran for 34 carries, 118 yards. That's not a lot of an average when it comes to carries because 3.5, I mean, it's not terrible because, like, terrible I would consider being, like, it's almost 4 yards a carry, so it's not, like, terrible. But it's not great either. I mean, 3.5 yards is not anything to brag about when you get 3.5 yards a carry, especially on 34 carries. That's not nothing to brag about, but it's enough to get them done. The biggest like key for them in this game was 5 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. So they also, Julian Saint also threw an interception, so their defense also had a turnover. But both teams had one turnover. Those kind of canceled out. Ohio State scored points off of the turnover that Fernando Mendoza threw, the interception that Fernando Mendoza threw. While it wasn't a pick six, they scored points later on off of that in the game. Later on that they scored on that drive after they got the interception, so they got points off of that turnover. Not because David Espinosa returned for a pick six, but because when the offense came out, then they used the field position and the turnover to create momentum and score with it. But no, Indiana they got a pick earlier on the game, not a pick six. I almost said pick six because I just talking about David Espinosa not getting a pick six, but getting a pick that led to 6 points for the offense at one point eventually. But no, Indiana got a pick of earlier on of Julian Saint on the first drive, and then they had 5 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. They kind of lived in the backfield of Ohio State to an extent throughout the game, and it just kind of showed one weakness in that game, and it might not have been a weakness throughout the whole season, but it's been weakness in moments here and there, is Ohio State's offensive line, and can they fix that in this like month-long break that they have? This month-long, like, you could call it, never mind, I'm not even going to try. I was trying to think of, you can call it like a sabbatical kind of, but it's not a sabbatical because they're getting to work, and they're working, but like a month-long sabbatical from games, is what you could call it, but it's not really that either. It's like a month-long, like, hiatus, like, just like a month-long, like, pause, I guess you could say, but it's really just this month-long, like, bye week of, we're going to get to work, start working hard, get back to work, and we're going to try and fix the offensive line. Can Ohio State fix that in that month? Can they fix the problems that they had in that month before they have to play either Texas A&M or Miami in the playoffs? Because if not, then boy, that offensive line might struggle throughout the playoffs. That doesn't mean that Ohio State can't win a national championship. It just means it's going to be harder. But if Ohio State can fix that offensive line, kind of like they had to do last year before the playoffs, if they can fix that offensive line, kind of get that physicality, that toughness, that grit into them, they might be able to do some things like they did last year. But no, Indiana had 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, which is just absurd to think of. They played really well defensively. They played with speed on the perimeter. They confused the heck out of Julian Saint. He looked like kind of like a lost puppy in certain moments throughout the game, like he didn't know what to do. Now, it also didn't help that he didn't have time in the pocket. When a quarterback doesn't have time, they don't have time to process. They don't have time to make they don't have time to make the decisions they need to make. And so when he doesn't have time, you lose that aspect of Julian Saint that makes him so good, is his processing ability of the defense. But also, that's full credit to Indiana and full credit to the defense and how they kind of confused him, but also put pressure on him and didn't give him that much time in certain moments of the game. Let's go to Ohio State. Julian Saint went 21 for 29, threw for 258 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. His QBR was 60.7. Fernando Mendoza's was 90.2, so big difference in QBR there. While Julian Saint had more yards, a decent amount of that came on a Hail Mary at the end of the game of them trying to like do a Hail Mary then lateral even though they didn't lateral it, but trying to do a Hail Mary to get into range to score a touchdown or a field goal. Well, trying to find a way to score a touchdown at that point because there was only like 2 seconds left, so they weren't going to score a field goal because there was no time. But Bo Jackson had 17 carries, 83 yards, 4.9 average. As a whole, Ohio State had 26 carries, 58 yards. Now, when I say 58, again, Bo Jackson had 83, but as a team they had 58 because sack yards in college football count towards your rush yards. So when you lose yards on a sack, you lose yards on your rushing yards total for the game. So like, for instance, Julian Sayin lost a total of 29 yards throughout the game from due to sacks. And so when you see that, it's like, okay, 5 sacks, a loss of 29 yards. That's why you end up with 58 rushing yards instead of 83 or more. And so then you go to the receiving stats, and Jeremiah Smith, he had 8 receptions, 144 yards, along with 52, 0 touchdowns. I mean, you look at that, you're like, okay, they got him the ball, so how they not score? How they not get in the end zone? We'll discuss that in a second. But again, like 40 or 50 of those yards came on that Hail Mary. Carnell Tate had 4 receptions, 45 yards for a touchdown. And so you just look at that and you're like, okay, so they were able to throw the ball for 264 total yards. They were able to kind of get the ball out there. And again, maybe 4 of those came on the Hail Mary, but they were able to get the ball downfield a little bit and get the ball to the playmakers. The problems came in the red zone. But let's look at their defense. Their defense had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. So the 3 sacks are big. 4 tackles for loss, pretty big. There could have been moments where they could have gotten a little bit more pressure on Fernando Mendoza, especially in those key moments where he made those big throws like Charlie Becker late in the game. They could have gotten more pressure on them and not given him the ability to make some of those throws maybe by just saying some more blitzes. But also, when you look at the game, Ohio State played, I wouldn't say vanilla, like they didn't play the most vanilla that you could possibly play, but they weren't like vanilla extract. They weren't this like special, type of vanilla. They weren't like, oh, we're gonna go throw out and do all these stuff that we haven't done all season. They played very conservative, and I would probably say vanilla. I don't know about defensive. I wouldn't say they played vanilla defensive. They did what they did all year long defensively. But we also saw last year with Ohio State, they played that same way defensively last year. And then in the playoffs, they brought a lot more blitzes. They put a lot more pressure on the quarterback. And so, with that being said, you could see the same thing happen this year in the playoffs. But we'll talk about that in a second because we're just going to talk about this game. Indiana ends up winning 13-10. Ohio State's kicker, Jaden Fielding, missed a 27-yard field goal late in the game to tie the game up. Ohio State has 2 red zone possessions where they don't score. One on a 3rd and 1, they try to throw it to Jeremiah Smith. He doesn't score. And then one on a 4th and 1. And then on a 4th and 1, they try to do a QB sneak with Julian Sayin he can't stay on his feet and his knee hits the ground before he gets the first down. And then later on, you have a 3rd and 1 where they try to do a little bit of like, they're going to try and do a pass to Bo Jackson out on 3rd and 1 instead of just running up the middle with Bo Jackson. They have him kind of run out. They're going to throw it to him. It's covered. So then they have Bennett Christian in as an X receiving option, and he's completely covered. And so then they go to the field goal. They miss a 27-yard field goal. They play a little bit more conservative in the red zone. They probably could have went for a 4th and 1 there and went for a touchdown to try and win the game instead of going for that field goal to tie the game. And if they do that, maybe the story ends differently. But guess what? You're going to say that since they missed the field goal. If they made the field goal and the game goes to overtime and they win in overtime, you're going to say, well, man, I'm happy they took the field goal. So it's like, it's after seeing the product of the moment, you wish you could change the decision, but that's not how that works. You have to live with the product. You have to live with the decision that they made, and they're going to live with that, and they're going to try and grow from it and learn from it. But also, the play calling was not great by Ohio State offensively. Like in moments, they decided, in moments they got too conservative. In like, for instance, 2 3rd and 1s. If you're going to go for it on 4th and 1, and you're going to try to do a QB sneak with Julian Sayin, well, I'll do the QB sneak on 3rd and 1, and then to get closer, and then do it again on 4th and 1, if you have to. Or running up the middle with your running back, Bo Jackson, on 3rd and 1, who's averaging 4.3 yards a carry, and is a physical back. Like, he can break some tackles. He can gain you a yard. Or do that on 3rd and 1 the next time. But also, like, in the red zone, for instance, on that 3rd and 1, late in the game before the field goal, when you threw the ball to Bennett Christian to try and get a touchdown, and he was covered and he couldn't catch the ball. If you're going to throw the ball, I get it, you're trying to do a play action, throw them off, get the ball to Bo Jackson. But shouldn't you at least have, instead of Bennett Christian, Jeremiah Smith out there, or Carnell Tate out there as a second option to catch the ball, just because they're better at creating separation than your third string tight end or fourth string tight end and Bennett Christian? Like, that's just some of the things that you could change and say if they make that change, maybe that game goes differently. Or like I said, on 4th and 1, instead of going with a QB sneak with Julian, saying maybe get Lincoln Keenos out there. You're more athletic and physical quarterback, running physical, athletic, running quarterback. Get him out there to do the QB sneak. Or get Bo Jackson the ball and have him go for that 1 yard. There's just some things that you could have done. You could have been a little bit more aggressive in those moments than just saying, hey, we're just going to try and play it and not lose. We're going to play conservative, not going to show anything really. Because did Ohio State really show anything on tape that they haven't shown in the regular season? No, not yet. And so in those moments, you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe they're saving it up for the playoffs. They kind of did that last year. They lost to Michigan the same way, 13-10, that they just lost to Indiana. They lost to Michigan last year. It was very reminiscent of actually last year's Michigan game, and the score being 13-10, and kind of how the game unfolded and how the play calling unfolded. And so maybe this lights a fire under Ohio State that wasn't there before. I'm not saying that they didn't have a fire. I mean, everyone's playing for hardware. Everyone's playing for national championship. They all got fires. But some fires can get bigger than others because some can get stoked by things that happened recently or in the playoffs. And so maybe this stokes Ohio State's fire and gives them a little bit more of a drive to maybe this stokes Ohio State's fire and gives them a little bit more of a drive that they might not have had before, because they won 16 games in a row. They won 12 regular season games and then 4 playoff games last year. They won 16 games in a row before this Indiana game, and they were the number 1 seed since week 1. Since after the game 1 of the college football season, after they beat Texas, they've been the number 1 ranked team in the country for a long time. You might get comfortable, you might get relaxed, and I'm not saying they were, but also with everything that just happened, you just beat Michigan. Brian Hartline just became the head coach at USF, and Chris Henry delayed his commitment until then he signed on Friday. You had a lot of distractions this week coming into the Indiana game, and maybe that kind of seeped into, maybe you guys didn't feel like you guys lost focus, but maybe Ohio State maybe they didn't have a lack of focus, but maybe they felt too comfortable, too relaxed going against Indiana, thinking they're just going to go in there and they're going to whoop them, and they're going to beat the crap out of them. Maybe they felt too relaxed in those moments. And so with that being said, maybe this loss is going to benefit Ohio State a lot because it gives them some scars. It gives them some war wounds that they can learn from. It gives them some things they can learn from, but also gives them a little bit more of a hunger to go. They're going to want to play Indiana again. And if they do play Indiana again, they're going to want to beat them bad because of that loss that they just took to them. So you're going to see that, and you're going to see that hunger. And that hunger helps you become better and stronger and grow. The pain of a loss helps you grow tremendously because you got players like Jeremiah Smith, they don't want to feel that pain again. So when they feel that pain of a loss, especially in a Big Ten championship to Indiana, they're going to go get back to work, and they're going to work harder than they were before, and it's going to kind of stoke that fire. So you could see Ohio State grow a lot off this, like they did going into last year's playoff, growing a lot off that Michigan loss. You can see them growing a lot off this and becoming a lot better and becoming less conservative. For one, I'm not saying they were conservative, but they look conservative. It looks like they said they're saving a lot of their play calling for the playoffs, which is kind of what they did last year, because you saw them be very conservative throughout the regular season, especially against Michigan, and then in the playoffs they just let it rip. Got a feeling they're probably doing the same thing this year, and I say that because they did it last year and it worked, and they won a national championship. Ryan Day is the only one that knows how to win a national championship in the 12-team playoff era, because he's the only one to do it. So when he did it and he saw how it worked, he might have had the same game plan throughout the season of not show too much on film and then change the whole entire game plan, because we got a month to do that going into the playoffs, and just put everybody on notice and change the game plan and go crazy and change their offensive play calling and become a lot more aggressive on offense and defense and not have a conservative play calling. We'll find out if that happens or not, obviously, when Ohio State plays their first playoff game. But I'm just saying there's a lot of reminiscences of what happened last year and what happened this year. Because Ohio State still has the number 1 team. When I say number 1, they have the most talented team in college football. Indiana may have just beat Ohio State, but that doesn't mean they're more talented than Ohio State. Ohio State has more NFL players on their team than Indiana has on their team. We just gotta be real with it. Ohio State's probably the most talented team in college football, like they were last year. Doesn't mean they're not gonna lose games, because that comes down to having a good game plan and good coaching. And I think for the playoffs, like last year, they're gonna have a good game plan. They're gonna have good coaching, and I think they're gonna kind of use the same strategy they did last year of we'll be a little bit more conservative throughout the season, not show as much on film. And then when the playoffs hit, we're going to be just a different animal. We're going to show everybody some crazy stuff that we weren't doing throughout the season. We're just going to air out like crazy. But, again, we got to see that actually happen. I'm just saying that's what I think is going to happen. We got to see that actually happen when they play either Miami or Texas A&M. And you know what? It's going to be a great playoff either way. You guys can come here, though, to just hear me talk only about Ohio State in the Indiana game, even though it was a phenomenal game played by two teams, and congratulations to Indiana. But you also want to hear about all the other conference championships happening. So we got Georgia and Alabama. Georgia ended up winning 28-7. It was really a no contest game. For instance, Alabama as a team ran for -3 total rush yards throughout the game, and so the run game struggles once again. Like it's been it's been the problem all year long. It's been their biggest threat to them being like the best team they possibly can be all year long, because they have not succeeded in the run game whatsoever. And -3 yards against Georgia on the ground. That's not a winning recipe to success. Ty Simpson went 19 for 39. 212 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 19.9 QBR. That's not a recipe for success. 19 for 39. 20 incompletions. That is not a recipe for success. That is a recipe for hot garbage. That's exactly what that is. Now the question is, can Alabama grow from this and learn from this going into the playoffs and fix their run game? That's the big problem here. If they can't run the ball, they're not gonna have success in the playoffs, because they have to play Oklahoma, who beat them, even though they outgained Oklahoma, Oklahoma beat them due to turnovers and that Oklahoma creates, but also the stellar defense that they have. But they're not gonna be able to beat Indiana if they can't run the ball. So they gotta fix that, because I mean, if they beat Oklahoma, then they have to play Indiana. So they gotta fix that. They gotta fix these offensive lapses that they've had. They've got to figure out how to get Ryan Williams going. He hasn't been really there all year, and he wasn't there in this game. He had 2 catches for 33 yards. He hasn't really been there all year. It's been more Jeremy Bernard. And so when you look at that, you got to say, okay, we got to figure out how to get him back to being one of the best receivers in college football, because everyone thought Ryan Williams was going to be the second best receiver in college football behind Jeremiah Smith. Hasn't happened. So if you're Alabama in this time before this Oklahoma game, for one, it's hard to beat the same team twice. They're playing Oklahoma again. It's hard to beat the same team twice. And Georgia just did that by not letting Alabama beat them twice. So it's like, okay, is Alabama going to beat Oklahoma twice? Well, Alabama's a better offense than Oklahoma. Their offense hasn't looked fantastic at Alabama recently, especially against teams like Georgia, with those -3 rushing yards, and Tyson's going 19 for 39, 212 yards and 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So Alabama, they've got time to figure out and fix these problems, but they've really got to dig deep to figure out and fix these problems. Let's look at their defense. Their defense gave up 28. Well, did they give up 28 points? Let's see. Yeah, their defense gave up 28 points. Gunnar Stockton threw 20 for 26, 156 yards, 3 touchdowns. Georgia ran for 141 total yards, with Nate Frazier having 13 carries, 52 yards, 1 touchdown, and then Gunnar Stockton having 13 carries and 39 yards. So like nothing like crazy special when it comes to pass yards. Alabama outgained Gunnar Stockton and Georgia through the air. Ty Simpson threw for 212 yards. Gunnar Stockton threw for 156. But Ty Simpson threw 1 interception, 1 touchdown. Gunnar Stockton threw 3 touchdowns. Also, Georgia outgained Alabama on the ground, 141 yards to -3 rushing yards. So, as a whole, Georgia outgained Alabama. While Alabama might have thrown for more yards than Georgia outgained Alabama, and they outscored Alabama, and their defense stepped up and showed that they're physical, they're mean, and they're nasty. Let's see. How many sacks did their defense have? They had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Alabama's defense had 1 sack and 7 tackles for loss. Georgia got to the quarterback. They got in the backfield. They were physical. They disrupted Alabama's run game and they disrupted their pass game. And Georgia just kind of showed everybody, hey, we got the best coach in college right now in Kirby Smart. He's a back-to-back national champion. He has 2 national championships as a head coach. He kind of said, hey, we're mean. We're physical again. And if we go into the playoffs like this, we're a dangerous team that nobody wants to play. And so you kind of see that being said. Alabama got whooped. And if Alabama can't get their head on right and fix what happened against Georgia, they're probably going to lose to Oklahoma again. Not because Oklahoma is fantastic offensively, but because defensively Oklahoma can hold them to 7 points also. And if Oklahoma only has to score 10 points to win, well then, if you're Brent Venables saying, if you're telling Brent Venables, hey, if your defense only gives us 7 points, are you going to win the game? He's like, yeah, because we'll score 10. So, puts Alabama in a pickle. They also have to go to Oklahoma. So, that's tough. Let's go to Texas Tech BYU. I watched this game. And I watched all these games. I was watching Georgia and Alabama before I went to watch Indiana Ohio State. And then while I was watching that, I was also watching Georgia and Alabama still. What of it was still going on. But I watched all these games, and watching Texas Tech versus BYU. I thought BYU was gonna have a chance going into the game, because I thought they would grow and get better. And boy, was I wrong. And I thought, particularly after the first drive of BYU, they were gonna have a chance, because BYU first drive of the game, they scored a touchdown. After that, Texas Tech's defense held them to a big, fat 0 the rest of the game. A big zip. They said, we're going to put you in a box, and we're going to fold the box over, we're going to wrap it, and then we're going to just, send it back home. Ship it back home. And that's what happened. Texas Tech won 34-7. Bear Bachmeier, while he injured his ankle at some point throughout the game, he didn't have that big of a game. 16 for 27, 115 yards, 2 interceptions. As a team, they threw for 137 yards total. BYU ran for only 63 yards. LJ Martin had 19 carries, 76 yards, for an average of 4 yards a carry, 1 touchdown. BYU had 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 7 pass deflections. But they really just did not do anything offensively. They couldn't move the ball in Texas Tech's defense. I mean, Jacob Rodriguez, phenomenal. He's a great player. He's phenomenal. There's so much you could say about this game. Ben Roberts, phenomenal. He's a great linebacker at Texas Tech. And so like you see, and just like, let's say Texas had 2 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. They had 2 interceptions, both by Ben Roberts, with 2 interceptions. Baron Morton threw for 215 yards, went 20 of 33, 2 touchdowns. They ran for 159 yards on the ground. Jacoby Williams had 80 yards for 15 carries, 80 yards. Cameron Dickey had 18 carries, 72 yards, a touchdown. And so you just see Texas Tech kind of just put it to BYU. Let's see, what did they do in kicking? They went 4 of 6 for field goals, with a long being of 44. So you look at it and you say, okay, Texas Tech, they put BYU in a box and shipped them back home. And they kind of destroyed BYU. It was kind of impressive. It was crazy to watch, because I thought the game would actually at least be a little competitive. And because, BYU, that's their only chance to get in the college football playoff. And obviously, as we see that they're not, that was their only chance to get in. And so with that being their only chance to get in, it's like, man, I thought it at least would have been like, if it's going to be a blowout, at least 28-14, not 34-7. Texas Tech's a scary good team. They got a tough defense, and then an offense that can be explosive at times and get the job done. But they're led by their defense, which is tough and physical. Now let's go to the game of chaos. Duke and Virginia. Duke ends up winning 27-20 in overtime against Virginia. And boy, did Virginia really blow their chance to get in the College Football Playoff. Because if they win, they're in. But Duke kind of brought this doomsday scenario of beating Virginia and saying, hey, we may not belong here, but we're going to do everybody a favor. You're not really doing everybody a favor because I didn't expect Virginia to really be great in the College Football Playoff. But they did everybody a favor, though, by saying they definitely did Miami a favor. Because while Miami was probably in either way, it helps that unless Miami got put in, there was going to be no ACC team in. And the committee, when you're in the committee, you're kind of thinking, man, we can't just leave one power conference out because, there'll be a problem. There'll be a lot of blowback. And so you look at it, you're like, okay, Duke kind of helped out Miami a little bit. Maybe not a whole lot because, again, Miami probably would have been either way, especially after BYU losing to Texas Tech because then it puts Miami and Notre Dame head-to-head. And when you look at that, you got to look at the head-to-head. And while Notre Dame might be Miami now, Miami beat Notre Dame week 1 of the College Football Playoff, week 1 of the college football season. And so when you look at that, it's like, okay, well, Miami won the head-to-head. I don't care. The committee's not going to care if it was in week 1 or if it was in week 12. They're not going to care. They're going to see that Miami won the head-to-head, even if Notre Dame's a better team now. They're going to look at the head-to-head and say Miami should be in over Notre Dame because Miami beat Notre Dame. Because if they're not, then why play the head-to-head? No one's going to want to play head-to-head matchups at that point out of conference. Because they're not going to mean anything. So you look at that and you're like, Miami got in. Duke kind of helped that, though. Duke was led by Darren Mensah, who went 19-25, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then on the ground they had Nate Shepard, who had 21 carries, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. And that's a team that ran for 137 yards total. And then Duke's receiving was led by Cooper Barkate, if I'm saying that right. I probably just butchered that name bad. But Cooper Barkate, 5 receptions, 91 yards. And Jeremiah Hazley, 3 receptions, 19 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Their 2 receiving touchdowns. Their defense, they had 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss, but they also had 2 interceptions. So their defense got the job done, held Virginia only 20 points. Virginia was led by, Virginia was led by Chandler Morris, who went 21 of 40, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And then on the ground, Harrison Whaley had 11 carries, 66 yards, 0 touchdowns, and Jamari Taylor, 15 carries, 65 yards, 0 touchdowns. And then receiving, Cam Ross, 5 receptions, 59 yards, 0 touchdowns. Jamari Taylor, 4 receptions, 34 yards, 1 touchdown. Eli Wood, 3 receptions, 30 yards, 1 touchdown, and so on and so on. They had 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss, and again, Corey Costner with the 1 interception. For Duke, you had Luke Medergo and Caleb Weaver with the 2 interceptions. So it's like Duke's defense created more turnovers. Well, let's see. Did they create more turnovers? Because I know Darren Mensah fumbled the ball twice, but I don't know. Duke fumbled the ball twice, but I don't know if Darren Mensah, their quarterback, fumbled the ball twice, but I don't know if they lost them or recovered them. I don't remember. And so it looks like they recovered them, but I don't remember. But either way, Duke's defense just held Virginia kind of in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation that they might not have been throughout in the season, especially in that first matchup. Duke's defense caused chaos and created turnovers. Now Virginia almost caused chaos because Virginia came back in that at the end of the second half to tie the game up right before the clock hit 0 to make it a 20-20 game to take it to halftime. But then in halftime, Duke scored a touchdown, make the extra point, and Virginia's quarterback throws an interception. So while Virginia almost made that comeback, they didn't concrete it. They didn't submit the final report, if you want to say, to get that to get that comeback win. And well, Duke held off Virginia. They won. They caused chaos. Duke was never going to be in the College Football Playoff. This is how we got JMU in the College Football Playoff. Duke's chaos. Duke was never going to be in. They weren't ranked high enough. They weren't ranked a high enough conference champion to be in over JMU. And so this is how JMU got in. And it'll be interesting to see how JMU does. They're probably going to get their butt kicked by Oregon, but If you're JMU, you're saying thank you to Duke because Duke was kind of a mercenary for you at this point. And you're saying thank you to Duke and you might be saying Duke's some flowers. You might be sending them some roses, sending them a box of chocolates as a gift. Saying thank you. Thank you. We'll take your help anytime. Tulane got in off the back of beating North Texas 34-21. While the score is closer than you might think, it's a 13-point game. It was never really close. Tulane was kind of just getting whatever they wanted against North Texas. Caleb Hawkins from North Texas, their star running back, got injured earlier on in the game and was never really the same when they came back. And then the running game wasn't the same. Drew Messamaker went 21-34, threw for 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. When you're down at that point, you're trying to force the ball into certain windows or certain things. Some turnovers happen. You also get some unlucky turnovers because some turnovers happen off of balls being tipped by his receivers and then going into the defense's hands. So he had some unlucky turnovers that happened, but Tulane kind of had control over the game. Jake Retzloff went 13 for 22, 145 yards, but on the ground, Tulane ran for 199 yards, led by Jamari McClure, 22 carries, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, and Jake Retzloff, 15 carries, 49 yards, 2 touchdowns. They got the job done. They put the ball in the end zone. Tulane forced turnovers or caused turnovers, and they got the job done. They beat Tulane, not Tulane, North Texas, sorry, and they secured their spot in the college football playoff. And John Summerall's a good coach. He's going to Florida. We're gonna see how he does at Florida. He has all the ability to succeed if he wants at Florida. It just comes down to if the program can buy into what he is selling, like the players, and the rest of his staff can buy into him, and if he can do what he's doing at Tulane down there, because he's a good coach. He's a very good coach. He's got all the capability. But no, Tulane had 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. North Texas had 0 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. So it's just like you look at it and you're like, man, Tulane kind of just manhandled North Texas. Now we get Tulane versus Ole Miss. Tulane got whooped, 45-10 against Ole Miss in the regular season? Yeah, 45-10. So, with that being said, can Tulane make it a lot closer and maybe come away with a win? Probably not. But Ole Miss doesn't have Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss doesn't have Lane Kiffin, so we'll find out. And then JMU beats Troy 31-14. It wasn't really a exciting game. Because up until the fourth quarter, it was 17-14. So it wasn't a really exciting, crazy game. JMU pulls away late in the fourth quarter against Troy to make it 31-14, and they secure their spot in the college football playoff because they win their conference championship. And since Duke beat Virginia, JMU sneaks in there and says, "Hey guys, welcome to the party. I know I wasn't invited, but I'm going to show up anyways." And that's kind of what happened. Because they might not have been invited before, but once Duke won, Virginia got out. JMU got that last-minute invitation, and they showed up. They showed up anyways. And we're going to see what JMU can do against Oregon. So, again, in the college football playoff bracket, you have James Madison versus Oregon in the first round. You have Alabama versus Oklahoma, Tulane versus Ole Miss, and Miami versus Texas A&M. I'm just going to make my picks now. I'm going to make my whole college football playoff pick. And then, as we get closer to the games, I'll dive deeper into the games and make the game picks. But I'm going to make my whole bracket picks. I'm picking Oregon to beat James Madison. Oklahoma to beat Alabama because it's at Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma's defense can do the same thing they did against Alabama the first time and their offense plays better, Alabama's just been kind of falling off the tracks a little bit. They've been in a wagon falling off the side of a mountain the past couple of weeks. And so it's not looking good for Alabama. I'm going to pick Ole Miss to beat Tulane. And, I'm going to go Miami to beat Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M, after what they had against Texas, they could either get really better and show it, but I also feel like Miami's going to come and play with a chip on their shoulder after almost not making it and kind of maybe feeling a little disrespected, and they're going to try and put it to Texas A&M. Now, that's also an interesting matchup because those are both teams that beat Purdue in week 1 and 2. Not Purdue, sorry. In Indiana, but different school. Miami and Texas A&M are both teams that beat Notre Dame in week 1 and 2 of the college football season. So you kind of see a clash of the teams that knocked Notre Dame out of the college football playoff. Because if Notre Dame didn't lose to Miami or Texas A&M, they'd be in. So you kind of see who can win that. And then after that, I have Oregon versus Texas Tech, I'm going to have Oregon beating Texas Tech. Texas Tech's defense is really good, but they haven't really played a team that's as good as Oregon yet this season, so I just don't know if that happened. I have Indiana beating Oklahoma, and Oklahoma doesn't have the offense to compete with Indiana, and Indiana's got really good defense with a good offense. So Oklahoma not having an offense is kind of their problem and the woes that hit them. I would have Georgia beating Ole Miss, even though depending on how Ole Miss plays against Tulane, Ole Miss could maybe beat Georgia. Ole Miss lost to Georgia 45 to 37, I think, in the regular season. It was by 8, and so by a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So without Lane Kiffin, there might be a fire under Ole Miss that is lit and a little chip on their shoulder, and they might come out and play inspired and play crazy and find a way to beat Georgia. But I would pick Georgia looks better than they did in that game, and I would at that point in that time, and I would pick Georgia to win that game. Then Ohio State versus Miami, I'd pick Ohio State to beat Miami. Ohio State has one of the best defenses in all college football, and I think they're going to learn from their offensive mistakes and their play calling mistakes against Indiana and grow and play a lot better in the playoffs and kind of come out like they did last year in the playoffs. Then I have Indiana versus Oregon. Indiana's defense is really good. And no, I could see Oregon getting their kind of get back and winning against Indiana and saying, hey, you may have upset us at our home stadium earlier at Autzen, but we want revenge. The thing is, though, Indiana went to Autzen and beat Oregon. So I don't know if Oregon can then beat them on a neutral site. Now, it was also really early in the season. Both teams are better now. And so you look at it and you say, okay, I would probably pick Indiana because I think Indiana's defense is better. And then their offense is still really good. And I think Indiana's defense is better than Oregon's. And I just don't know if I see Oregon winning against Indiana on a neutral site if they couldn't do it at their home stadium. But Oregon could definitely win that game. And they're definitely going to have the aspect of revenge. And it is hard to beat the same team twice in one season in college football. But as you look at Indiana right now, there's some things that they got going on that I don't know if Oregon has got the same thing going on. Oregon's got more talent, but do I think they can beat Indiana in that moment? I don't know. That's a tough game to pick. And then I got Georgia versus Ohio State. I'm going to pick Ohio State again. I think Ohio State's got a revenge on their mind from what was it, 2022 or 2023? Not 2023, 2022, when we lost on a missed field goal again in the college football playoff, in the 14 playoff, that would have pushed us into the national championship against TCU. We lost by a missed field goal again by us, and so a lot of missed field goals haunts Ohio State if you think about it. Last year, Michigan, Georgia a couple years ago in the playoffs. So I think Ohio State's looking at that, and they're also still coming off mad and angry after this Indiana loss, and I see them coming in and kind of just showing Georgia what's up. Now, I'm not saying they're going to whoop Georgia. I'm just saying I think they're going to beat Georgia. I want to say I think it has a better defense than Georgia, and I think Ohio State has a better offense than Georgia's offense. And while the offenses aren't playing against each other, the defenses aren't playing against each other, it's defense versus offense and offense versus defense. I think Ohio State has a better defense, so I think Ohio State's able to hold their offense to less points. And I think Ohio State has I think Ohio State's offense is very capable of putting up a decent amount of points on Georgia's defense. When I say decent amount, I mean 21-28 could win that game. And I think Ohio State's offense is good enough if they fix their ways and change what happened in against Indiana and change that and change those play calling and change the mistakes and fix those mistakes. I think Ohio State would beat Georgia at that point. And then we're gonna look at the national championship. I would have Ohio State beating Indiana in the national championship. If Ohio State and Indiana meet again, if you're Indiana, you're not gonna be as happy because if you're Indiana, you want the first meeting to be in the national championship and not the Big Ten championship because now Ohio State has the advantage. Because Ohio State and Indiana meet again, Ohio State's gonna have the advantage of they're not gonna be happy that they lost the first game. They're gonna have the advantage of what you could call. I mean, they're playing for a national championship, so everyone's gonna have motivation. But Ohio State have more motivation because they just lost to Indiana in the Big Ten championship, and so they're gonna have even more motivation, and they're gonna come out angry. And my pick right now is just Ohio State to win the national championship. You're gonna say I'm a homer because I'm a Ohio State fan, but I really think Ohio State's gonna come out, fix those mistakes, and do what they kind of did last year's last year's national championship and college football playoff, and kind of go on a similar tear or run. Maybe not as dominant, but they're gonna fix those mistakes and they're gonna go out there and they're gonna go win. They are still the most talented team in college football, so if they can fix those mistakes, they have the ability to do this. Now, without further ado, let's get to some scores from college basketball. we're mostly just going to go over scores because while we're coming near the end of the college football season, so we're going to start transitioning more into college basketball content as we come to the end of bowl games, as we come into the beginning of bowl games and the college football playoff, and just less college football in general. We're going to start transitioning more into these, more into college basketball. But because it's such a long video already, I'm just going to go into some scores. Iowa State beat Purdue last week, 81-58. Arizona beat Auburn, 97-68. Michigan beat Rutgers, 101-60. Duke beat Michigan State, 66-60. Louisville beat Indiana, 87-78. Illinois beat Tennessee, 75-62. St. John's beat Ole Miss, 63-58. And so you got some of those better games from last Saturday. And so, for one thing, I'll just say this: they're not in the top 25 anymore. They're 5-4. They are struggling. They look awful. They do not look good. They look like a boat without a captain, or like a ship without a captain and a crew. Meaning, there ain't nobody on board. It's just out to sea by itself. And well, it ain't gonna stop because no one's there to stop it. And it's gonna crash into something because no one's there to steer it. And that's kind of what they look like right now. They look like just a team that is abysmal. You could say it's a dumpster fire that's going on there right now, kind of. We'll see if they can fix that by the end of the season. But man, college basketball and college football, crazy stuff that happens in both of them. I love them both, and I love being able to talk about both of them. That's Game Talk 24/7. Thank you guys for watching.